All right, what is up guys? Ryan Apollo here, and in this video I want to give you some essentials to get started with coding. In the last video we explored some opportunities available with code, but by no means was that all encompassing. In fact, after I released the video, I thought of a lot of areas where I could have included that, but with that being said, there's probably a lot of beginners watching the videos that they really like to get started in coding, but that can be overwhelming as well, like pretty much everything in coding. So in this video, I'm going to give you 5 coding essentials that you absolutely need in order to get started. So yeah, let's get right into it. So the first thing that you need for coding is any installations for your target language. So I'll give you an example here. I know a lot of people have an interest in Python, right? So before you can actually start writing Python and executing Python, you're gonna need what is called an interpreter. And in order to get an interpreter, you can just simply go to their website, because Python is an interpreted language. Some languages are compiled languages, like Java is a compiled language, C++, Rust, all of that, but Python runs with something called an interpreter. So you can just go to python.org. If you just Google Python, it'll take you here, and all you need to do is go to downloads, and there's 2 different versions of Python. There's Python 3 and Python 2. Download Python 3. It's like the most current now. Maybe there'll be a need for you to download 2, and in that case you can download 2, but just getting started, I would say just download Python 3. So this is going to install like the interpreter and all the stuff you need to actually be able to execute Python programs on your system. Now, if you're using something like VS Code, which I'll get to in a minute, you don't have to worry about manually going to the site. You can do it all through there. Another thing with Python is you need a package manager. And basically what that is you want to reuse other people's code in order to be able to build really useful stuff. And in order to do that, you have to install what are called packages, which are basically other people wrote code, bundled it into a package, and you just need to pull those packages into your system so that you can use their code and basically do some really cool stuff with very few lines of code, because you're leveraging things that other people have built already. Now, there's a manager, which is basically a program created to manage the packages, to allow you to install new packages, keep track of all the packages that you currently have. And that package manager for Python is called pip. Now, for example, if you're using something like JavaScript, you'd use like npm or yarn. If you were using Rust, you use cargo. All these are the same thing. There's package managers for those languages, right? So, but for Python, it's pip. So that's another thing you would need to install, which you'd be able to do it through here. But now this brings me on to the second coding essential, and that is a code editor or IDE. So let me also just back up and say that if you wanted to, you completely could just write code from your terminal. Like you could write code just from a basic text editor. Like if I go on here, I'm on Ubuntu right now. If I just go on here, let's say like I just write like a basic Python like hello world program. So let's just say like I just have a print hello world. This is how simple hello world is in Python, right? Let's say I just have something like this, right? I can just save this file. We'll save it on my desktop for time's sake, and we'll call it, go back here, and we'll name it hello.py, right? So we could just save it here, and because I named it .py, like the text editor can see like it's Python, that's why it's like highlighting this stuff correctly. Like I can just simply run that from here, or like the terminal. Like let's see, where am I currently? I can go to my desktop, and I'll explain these commands here in a bit. But yeah, I could just do Python 3 hello.py, and there you go. See, it says it prints hello world to the console. So I could just simply do this in like Notepad if I was on Windows, or simple text editor, right? But there's an advantage in installing a more advanced version. I like to use VS Code. Some other examples of text editors, like coding text editors you can use, are Sublime or Atom. But VS Code is pretty quickly becoming like an industry standard as far as like these basic text editors here. And what's really, really cool about it is, while this is just a simple text editor, you can download things called extensions. And these extensions basically expand on this and make it a full-blown IDE. And so I guess I should back up and explain, what do I mean when I say IDE? When I say IDE, I'm simply talking about a integrated development environment. So some examples of that: if you're Java, you could use IntelliJ, Visual Studio for like C++ and C# and stuff like that. But this is Visual Studio Code, which is different. This is basically just a text editor, but by installing extensions, I can get a lot of extra functionality out of it, to the point that it's basically a full-blown integrated development environment. So I have a few installed here. I write a lot of JavaScript stuff, so I have ESLint, which is just a code extension for JavaScript, as well as this JavaScript ES6 code snippets, some theme stuff just to make it look cool, and Python, which gives me basically all the functionality of an IDE for Python. So this is really cool. I highly recommend VS Code. It's definitely way better than using a text editor, and it's free, which is cool. Free. Let me explain how it kind of works. I'll show you. I wrote that program earlier, right? So I can open that file in here, hello.py, and then it'll pop up in here. And I have an integrated terminal that I can use. I can just pop up this terminal, so it's really nice. I don't have to like have one open on my system. I can just run the code from here. So it's like really convenient. Wait, where am I currently? Okay, let me get into the desktop, and I'll show you. I can run the code from here as well. So it's super nice. I guess I need to install some extra things here, which I'll do that later. But yeah, so this is really good, especially when you're writing like a bunch of code. This is like super full featured. It'll give you good like syntax highlighting. When you install the extensions, you can get like advanced like debugging and stuff like that, and has a lot of functionality. Like you can refactor your code and all the things that you would, all the features and functionality you get from an IDE. Now, essential number three is version control and code repositories. These are absolutely essential. So what is version control? Basically, it allows you to upload your code to a code repository. Now, a code repository is just a place to store your code sort of in the cloud online somewhere, right? Because the problem is, if you just, you could just keep the code on your system, but the problem with that is, if you're building an application and you're trying to add some new functionality to it, and that breaks the existing code, and then you try to roll it back to the version that was working, but you can't remember what code you removed and deleted, and it would just be a mess, right? But with version control, you can take the code from when it was working and push it onto the cloud. GitHub is a site that most people use. It's the most popular. It's kind of industry standard site, github.com. But basically, you push your code there, right? And then you can work on your code and know that like you still have a working version there. You can have different branches. Like say you want to add some functionality, you can add it. You can basically have a branch that's working, the master branch, and then you create another branch where you try to add functionality. Once that's working, then that can be the new master branch. You see, and especially if you're working with other people, say you're collaborating on a project, this is where it really comes in handy, because you guys can like make changes to the code, then push it here, then they can pull down the newest version, and then they can work on it, and when they're done working on it, they can push it. So it's like really good for collaboration, especially like as well. So yeah, you just go here and you sign up, And once you do, I'll show you I'll give you a sort of example of how you would use this, right? Because, you know, this can be kind of confusing at first. It requires some command line knowledge. So I'll just walk you through that right now. So with our program earlier, we had on the desktop. Let's say we wanted to build a project out of this, like we wanted to create a repository for our code, right? So we have the code here. So yep, I'm gonna install Git for the version control. So this is a program that you have to have on your computer. Now, if you're running Windows, you're gonna need to install something called mingw. And you just install it from this site, mingw.org. And it basically is like a minimal GNU for Windows. So what that means is basically you have some Linux functionality there, and you have Git, most importantly. So I've done that on my Windows system. So I do have Git, as you can see here. So I'm able to use Git and all that stuff here. And also it makes the command line stuff way easier, because then you don't have to deal with Windows commands. You can run a lot of Linux commands. Not all of them, but a lot of them. This directory that we're currently in, the desktop, it's going to initialize it as a Git repository. Oops. Getting a little dyslexic here. Just git init. Simple as that. And that initializes it said. And the next thing you want to do is git add. And then the dot means current directory. So everything in the current directory is going to add it to staging, basically. And now I'm going to make my first commit. Every time you are about to push changes onto the onto GitHub or whatever repository you're using, you need to make what's called a commit. So do that with the -m flag and then a comment. I'll just say first commit. And now once I do that, you're gonna see, okay, if you do it for the first time, there might be some information that it needs you to set up first. All right, so now that I've done that, I can go ahead and make my first commit. So once you do that, you'll see that it says one file changed, because before nothing was there. Now hello.py is there. So that's why one file change, one insertion, because we inserted a file. If we deleted any files, it would show like the deletions. All right, so now that we've done that, we are ready to create our repository on GitHub. Right, so all you need to do is you need to click this little plus sign here, go to new repository, and we're just call this test, the description of test. We'll make it private, and we could have it public if we wanted other people to see it and collaborate on it. Now, it has all the commands here, the commands that I'm telling you to run. So this will be helpful. And then this is the one we really need here, because we've ran these other commands for the most part. I didn't add a README file, but I could have if I wanted to. So now we added this. We can confirm at any time, like we added this as the origin. At any time we can run a git remote-v and confirm that, like, okay, we have it as the origin. So if you're ever confused what you have set up, you can run that command. And now that we've done that, we can just go ahead and actually push the code. And to do that, we just run git push origin master. And it looks like I fat fingered it. Well, this will be a good learning experience then for you guys, right? So as you see, I typed it in wrong. I typed a slash instead of a dot there. So how do we change this? I guess it's like a good thing that I made this mistake. Well, basically to change it, you're just gonna need to run a git remote and then set-URL, and then we'll put in the correct URL. And yeah, no quotes. And so now we can confirm that we did that correctly, and now we see that it changed there. So now if we run a git push origin master, it'll work once we sign in. So yeah, a little rocky on the tutorial here, but I think it's actually beneficial to like have this in the recording, so you guys can you guys probably will run into that issue at some point, or if not, like there'll be a situation where you need to change this. So I think it's good to keep in so you guys can see. Right, so now that we push that, we'll see that if we look at our test repository, where is it? Test. Now we see it's here, hello.py, the code that we wrote. So yeah, that's how that works. And now one last thing that I'm going to mention is that at any point you might want to make changes to the code, and then you're going to push it again, right? So let's just go ahead and I'll make a quick change to the code, right? So you have the code here, hello world, print, I'll say changing the code. And now we save that, right? So I guess, I can do this all from this terminal here too, if I wanted to. So I'll do the rest from here, right? So say I make some change to the code. Now I want to push it to the server. Now what I need to do is do git add again, and then git commit -m, and then give it the comment that you want. We'll call it second, right? File changed, as we obviously did here, or git push origin master, boom. So now we just log in. Because it's a private repository, especially, it makes us log in. So now, now we should be able to confirm that that change went into effect. There you go. So that's how that works. Now, if you're collaborating with someone, you're going to want to do a git pull first, so you can pull the most recent version into your computer, and then make the changes, and then git add, git commit, and git push. So that's all you have to do there. Okay, so yeah, I know that was a lot, but I'll leave the code down in the description below, so you guys can kind of reference it, what things I wrote, like the Git commands. But yeah, the next thing that is really important to learn is basic terminal skills. And if you've been watching the video up to this point, you probably already have seen me do a lot of the commands. Now, I will say that, some of you guys might be using Windows, in which case there will be some slight changes to the commands and certain things that you won't be able to do just straight up, unless you maybe use PowerShell or something. But yeah, here's the basic rundowns of the commands. There's only certain basic commands you need to know. You don't have to have too much Linux knowledge or Windows command line knowledge to be able to develop, to be honest, but there are some essentials you need to know. So the first one that I'd like to cover is, well, I'll just use a terminal for this. I could use this terminal, but I'll use this one instead. First one is pwd, and that is print working directory. That'll tell you at any point what directory you are. Sometimes you need to know where you are, because you fire up a terminal and all you see is this little blinking cursor, right? A lot of times you'll know where you are, but if you ever need that confirmation, pwd. And there's also the ls command, which is list. So it'll list everything in that directory. So I run that here, and we're in the desktop, and all we see is hello.py, because that's the file that we created here. That's pretty much everything we have there. Now, sometimes there'll be hidden files. So if you do ls-la, then you'll see some hidden files. Hidden files start with a dot. So git, remember when we did git init, that created this hidden git file. If you're using Windows, ls will not work. You're going to use dir instead, and that'll basically do the same thing. Here I have a ton of stuff because this is my home directory on Windows. But yeah, I see the hidden files there as well. By default, if you run dir, it'll show you hidden, I think. Or if not, you might have to change that in your Windows settings somewhere. Can't remember. I don't really use Windows command line very often, to be honest with you. I kind of hate it. So, but yeah, so the next one is cd, that's change directory, right? So we're in the desktop right now. Remember, if I want to go back one directory back to my home directory, I can do cd ... Okay, so now I'm one back, right? I can do ls to see what's there. Say I want to go into my documents, I can do cd documents. And now I'm in my documents, right? And I can see what's there. Or I could do, you can do multiple at a time. So I can go back 2 directories with this command, right? And now I'm just in home. So some really useful commands. It's good to know how to move around on these terminals, right? So that's another command that you'd pretty frequently, very frequently use, in fact. Now let's say I wanted to make a directory. In development, this is very common. Like, you get into desktop real quick. you need to create like a directory for, say you're learning React, you want to create like a components directory where you can store all your component files. Well, what I would do is make dir, and then I would type the name of the directory. So components, let's just say. Let's say we want to create 2 directories. We could create 2 at a time, components and directory, right? So that created these 2 directories as you see here. It's good I'm doing on desktop. You guys can kind of see visually how it works. So yeah, you can do that. And then it's getting kind of dark in here. Let me just turn on the lights real quick. So yeah, you could do that. And now that's how you create directories. Now I can CD into those directories. And once I do that, I can create files from the command line as well, which is super handy to quickly create files. Because it's honestly, it's really annoying if you're, say you're coding on here, right? Let's just do this here. Say you're coding. It's really annoying to do file, new file, create it, then name it with the right extension so that it, so that it like registers it as Python. Like that's really annoying. Like we can do that really quick. I'll show you. I could, well, let me open a folder first. Well, let's say that we're here in the desktop. Now, if I wanted to, let's say I want to create another file. If I do it this way, I can do it. It's just kind of annoying, right? It created this untitled file, and then I'm going to have to go in. I don't even think you can rename it on here. I think I might have to literally go into files, find it, right-click it, and rename it. Like, that's really annoying, right? So there's a way faster way to do that if you use the terminal. This is why the terminal is super handy for development. That's why I listed it as a coding essential. So I can run a command called touch, and I could say name of the file. So second file .py. And there you go. And it's just right there. And because I put .py, it knows it's Python. I can just start typing whatever, print second, right? So now it's like, it's really that simple. So touch command, super useful. Now, another command that's pretty useful is remove, because what if I wanted to delete this? I could do that, but generally with like development and stuff, it's all about efficiency. So the quicker you can do something, the better. Always try to be as efficient as possible. Learn hotkeys, use hotkeys, tab autocomplete, and stuff like that. So if I say I want to delete this file that I just created, I could easily do that with the rm command for remove. So I can do rm, that, and now it's gone. Same thing with these folders here, right? There's those 2 folders I created. Say I want to delete directory. I can't just do rm directory. It'll complain that you cannot remove a directory. So what you have to do is -r for recursive. So that will remove the directory and everything within it. So now, if I run it with the -r, now you see it's gone. So that's another really useful command. Now the next one that's really useful is cat. And on Windows it would be type. So the cat is really useful because it concatenates all the text within a file. So basically allows you to read the contents of a file from the terminal. So say I wanted to read the contents in our hello.py file, I could do cat hello.py, and then that will print all the contents of that file. So super useful command. Now the next one is sudo for super user do. And basically if I run who am I am a user account on the system. I'm not root. Root is basically like the highest level of privilege as far as accounts go. Sometimes when you run commands, you need to run it as root because it needs certain permissions in order to do what you need it to do. Let's say I want to install something. I want to install Python, right? App install Python. See, permission denied. I'm not able to do that as my user account. I have to be root in order to do that. So what I do is I just put sudo in the beginning, and then I just put in my password, and then it's able to install it. And it's installing Python 2 here because I didn't tell it 3, which I already have Python 3 anyways. But yeah, that's how the sudo command works. But like I was saying, if you're using Windows, that's fine. I would highly recommend mingw. I'll show you really quick. because I'm in GW here. I can do all the same things. It allows me to do ls. I don't have to use dir. I can like make directories. I think you can do that anyways, but it gives you a lot of extra functionality. I'm pretty sure you can cat stuff as well. And most importantly, it allows you to run Git commands. So yeah, super useful. And even comes up here as bash. Way better than using the Windows command line. And that brings me to essential number 5, an idea in mind or a tutorial. So anytime you have cool ideas to code, that's like the best. When you're just starting out, I would say learn a tutorial or something really basic just to get you started, but don't get trapped into just doing tutorials. So once you learn the tutorial, try to take that and write something for yourself with it, because that's when the true learning comes into play, to be honest. You'll have to Google like a ton just to get it working, but that's where you truly learn, when you're building for yourself. And to be honest, like that is when coding is at its most fun to me, when you're just building something super useful for yourself. So I'll give you a couple ideas, I guess, before I just, get going here, because I guess this is a beginner video. You could do something. Python is super cool. You could build like things that automate processes. You can learn like Selenium, and you can automate your web browser to automatically like log you into pages and perform clicks and stuff like that. That might be a little hard for like someone who's super beginner, but that's one thing you can do. Python is super good for just quick scripts to automate stuff, especially. I mean, it's good at a lot of things. That's why it's such a popular language, but that's an idea. You could go to your bank allows you to download a CSV file. You could use Python to go through that CSV file and perform and like extract that data and perform some calculations to help you budget, and then tell you if you're under the budget, over the budget, and you can have different categories and be like, oh, you overspent in this category. This is how much money you had left over based on your paycheck and all. Like you could build stuff like that. It wouldn't be too hard. For a super beginner, it might be kind of hard, but these are just some of the things that you can sort of work towards. But yeah, just getting started in the beginning, you're going to be learning the fundamentals. So for loops, right? You're going to be learning about for loops. You could build a script that would be like a newsfeed script. So you could have a list of all the websites that you frequently go to, and then you could just use a for loop to open your web browser to all of those pages. So you could have like a newsfeed script, like these are all my news sites, newsfeed.py, and then like I do Python 3 newsfeed.py, and then it just opens up all my news sites in a web browser, like all my crypto news sites and like security news sites. Yeah, you could do that for your sites you frequently visit, and it's just like a really nice time saver and a pretty cool thing. Like anytime you're building stuff for yourself, that's when coding is at its most fun. But yeah, I don't want to ramble for too long here. There's one last thing, and this is completely optional, and that is a Linux VM. You see I have Ubuntu here because, and I honestly, I have a Mac and I love developing on my Mac, but when I'm on my desktop, I just hate developing on Windows personally. This is completely optional, but if you guys decide to do it, then you have access to the Linux kernel and terminal. So it's like, that's what makes it so useful. It's really nice to develop, a very smooth experience. But if you guys do decide to do this, I would recommend using VirtualBox. VMware is also an option, but VirtualBox is completely free. I know VMware has VMware Player, but I kind of prefer VirtualBox over it. Just a personal preference. But yeah, either one is fine. And yeah, if you guys want to know more about this, just let me know in the comments section below. If there's an interest, I can create a video showing how to set up a Linux VM in a, within like VirtualBox or something like that. But yeah, I hope you guys found this of value. I know this was like a pretty long video, but these coding essentials are like really important, and it'll really help you get started if you understand all of them. So yeah, I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.